Hi everyone, Professor King here. I should stop making ridiculous faces at the beginnings and ends of videos, but I can't help myself. It's who I am. That's a really long filler. I'm trying to make my filler as long as possible. In this video, I will be discussing essentially the middle third of Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye. From See the Cat to See Father, those titles. So we've gone into winter and we are in spring when this section ends. So we had fall, autumn, winter, now we're in spring. So in a moment, I'm going to take it to a share screen so that we can look at really particular characters, because a lot of this section is characterization, is backstory about certain characters and current story, some more minor characters that we haven't met yet, or some minor characters that we revisit and their role in this novel. So characters are going to be very important in this section. However, that doesn't mean we ignore other parts like plot or context or, all of the literary terms that we've been studying and applying to our readings up to this point. It's just one way of looking at this section of the novel. So I'll take it to a share screen. Before I do, remember you can contact me through Canvas, my email, Instagram, Zoom, or Pronto, whatever way works best for you. And all of those, the information is on the homepage of Canvas and on the syllabus. So again, when questions arise, please hit me up. But let us dive right in. So, come on, share screen. What am I doing with my life? Who knows? That's not it. All right. So we've got, hello. What are you doing? There we go. That was the syllabus, in case you were curious. The one that we have for our class. So here are some notes on, again, like the middle portion of The Bluest Eye. Before we talk about characters, there's one thing I want you to try and attempt with this novel. It's really hard to do so because inevitably emotional reactions will come up. This book elicits a lot of emotion out of its readers. That's just to be expected. However, I remember the first time I actually read this was in grad school, and our professor never quite articulated what I'm about to say clearly, but I think he was trying to get at it. But I'll just come out and say it. As much as you can, try to practice, when you're reading this novel, try to practice some form of emotional detachment. One, because again, a lot of the things in the novel can be very triggering. They're very painful and difficult to read. And so we inevitably have a certain feeling about a particular character. And that's to be expected. That's natural. If you hate a certain character, if you love a certain character, if you feel pity for a certain character, or confusion or ambivalence, whatever, right? That's, of course, you're going to feel that. But when you are examining and analyzing this novel, again, when you're thinking about how Toni Morrison took every single word and just crafted it so perfectly into these 200 some odd pages, what you should try to do is look at it as someone critiquing art, right? So then you can kind of pull yourself away from the action of the novel a little bit, and you can look at it for the work of art that it is. Again, I'm not saying don't feel anything, because, I love me some feelings, and I'm sure Morrison would appreciate that too if she were still alive. What I'm saying is, when you can, try to analyze this from a space of emotional detachment. And the best way to do that is, especially when you're finding out more and more about certain characters, and your attitude or your feeling about a certain character changes based on new information that you find out throughout the course of the novel, Again, Toni Morrison is doing this for a reason. She really wants us, just like she says in the intro, right? She wants us to look at this, in a sense, she wants us to look at this as like cause and effect. Like, where do these people's very often painful experiences or confusing outlooks on life, or just, you know, where do their sadness or their hate or their joy or their apathy, where does it come from? Think of it in terms of cause and effect. Because if you can detach and you can think about this novel in terms of cause and effect, Morrison seems to be saying something about why these characters end up who and where they are. So keep that in mind, right? Again, it's totally natural to have certain feelings about certain characters. I know I do, right? That's the beauty of art, right? The beauty of written art, which is otherwise known as literature and fiction, right? Even nonfiction is written art. It's totally normal to feel to like a character in this way or to hate a character in this way. But again, always think about why. Unlock that inner 5-year-old. You know, why is this person like this? And so if this person is like this because of X, how can I potentially take that into account when I consider this character? You know? And so keeping that in mind, let's think about the following characters. Well, first we'll start with some more minor characters. Mr. Henry, who we've seen pretty much since the beginning of this novel, and the Maginot Line, who we met, you know, a little bit later than Mr. Henry. So I want you to just think, like, again, now we know new things about these characters. So how has your view changed? And what about them do you now know that has accounted for that change? Or did you get a sense that they were always the way that you kind of anticipated? So think about that deeply. We also have Geraldine, Junior's mother. Think about how Geraldine views her world, her world, whatever you want to call it. What's her approach to sex? How does she deal with or view her son? What about her cat? A lot of cats in these stories. I didn't do that intentionally. What about men? And you know, some of these can be interchangeable in certain ways, right? Like men and sex. How does she feel about white people? How does she feel about Black people? How does she feel about Pecola? How does she treat Pecola in this section? So if she represents some sort of type or some sort of personality trait, or she is the embodiment of certain ideas, what are they? And again, why? And then of course, one of our more major characters, Pauline Breedlove. What's her approach to sex and intimacy? Does it change from the beginning of this section on her to the end of the section? Think about the ways in which she views and interacts with white people. And not just, again, perhaps think about how it changes from when we first meet her to sort of the end of this section. And her, toward the end of this section, you know, we get into this discussion of her as the ideal servant. And what does that mean? And what's kind of being said between the lines, if you will, about people like her who become the ideal servant. What about her relationship with Charlie? Again, how does it start out? Where does it end up? And why? The feelings that she develops about beauty, about respectability. There's some great, I mean, this section, all the sections, but there are some great lines in this section, you know, about how Pauline views beauty or what she thinks about beauty, even as it applies to her own children and herself, given what we know about her physical appearance, if I'm not giving too much away. And again, that respectability, that kind of goes back to that whole notion of the ideal servant, but it also kind of goes back to she and Charlie as people and how they are different. Think about where she comes from geographically, right? Historically, geographically, and where she ends up and what might be significant, what she has to say about that and what might be significant about that. Because we do have her internal monologue, right? There are at least 2 passages in this section where she is reflecting on experiences she's had, and she's giving her own opinion about these things. So be very aware of that. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's Morrison's opinion, but Morrison, again, is using this character as a vehicle to show us, to make some sort of argument to us. And so it's our job as readers of great literature to tease that out. If Polly is representative of something or of multiple things, what is Morrison, the person who created her, who created this universe, the author, what's Morrison saying using that character as a vehicle? And then the last one is just like me being a nerd, because why not? I sometimes when I read this, the old Catholic school upbringing comes back, and I think about the story of Paul, right? Saul, who becomes Paul. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Western Judeo-Christian tradition, or at least the Christian tradition, because I think Saul and Paul is New Testament, right? It might be Old Testament. I don't know. I haven't skimmed that Bible in a long time. I'm not going to lie. But essentially, Saul is this sinner. You know, he's a greedy guy. He's not really concerned about anybody but himself. And he has this epiphany where he realizes that it's not about you, Saul, right? It's about everybody and serving others, and you know, I think following Christ if it's the New Testament, and following God if it's the Old Testament. But you know, he kind of has this major epiphany, changes his name from Saul to Paul, and then becomes, right, a servant of the Lord, and serves people, is selfless. He goes from being selfish to selfless. There's more to it, but that's like the bottom line. And so sometimes when I read this and I think of the name Pauline, right, like writers, again, deliberate decisions, but we have to tease out a lot of times what those deliberate decisions are. Sometimes I think about how this might be allegorical, or how it might be an allusion, I guess is the better term. An allusion, Allusion, not like a magic trick, an allusion, a hint, a reference, etc. How this might be an allusion to the biblical story of Paul, and how it's a kind of a twist on that, right? And what Morrison might be saying. I could be totally wrong. That's just one interpretation. Again, this is where you get to be clever and wacky and have your fun little interpretations like I just did. But I think about that. And so if she had a certain epiphany that changed the way she operated within the world, what was it? And how is it similar to or different than, if you know the biblical story of Paul? If not, it doesn't matter. You're not like getting tested on it or anything. How that might be similar or different. All right, well, that's about it. That's all I have to say about this section. I mean, that's not all I have to say. I'll take it off, stop share now. That's not all I have to say about this section. Clearly, I wish we were in person right now and we could just blah, blah, blah about this section forever. It'll happen again eventually. Unfortunately, most of you will have passed this class and you'll never have to do that with me again. Bummer. Hopefully all of you will have passed it too. That's, that's my wish. Well, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, night, week, weekend, whenever it is. Time is a flat circle, to quote Matthew McConaughey's character in that one TV show that was on HBO. I can't remember now. I even wrote an article on it. Anyway, I hope you all have a great rest of your night and weekend. Hit me up if you have questions, and have a wonderful day. Bye.